Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Politically Conscious. President Trump is hitting the road on his so-called Affordability Tour, boasting an A+++ economy and pushing Republicans to lock down key battleground states. Meanwhile, after being gerrymandered out of her own district, Jasmine Crockett jumps into the Democratic Senate primary in deep red Texas. We ask our political experts, will Trump's tour actually sway voters, and does Crockett have a real shot in Texas? If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. Welcome to episode 54 of Politically Conscious. We back at y'all, popping up on y'all, trying to raise the conscience on from a political standpoint for our community. I got Emil Bryan, a long-time consultant here with me, as well as Leo Smith, coming from the right of things. Emil comes from the left of things. I'll let these brothers introduce themselves. We got a lot of cuts today, and we're going to go ahead and get into them. And so if you are a first-time watcher, we watch political cuts from around the internet, from media, and give you our left and right and little take on it, if you will. Here's some movement in the background. I don't know if that's me or...
It's not me.
It might be me. Okay. I think it may have been me. Okay, sounds good. All right, Emil, if you will introduce yourself, let's make it quick and get into our cuts.
Emil Bryan, I'm a political consultant, author, speaker, life, leadership, and business coach. My job is to tell the candidates that work with me to tell the truth, tell it early, tell it often. Bad news does not get better with time, and the American people need the information to make informed and intelligent decisions. I know I'm going against the grain, Montoya, but if a politician tells the truth, they'd be surprised how welcome they'd be at the voting booth.
All right, you are going against the grain. I always say that. All right, Leo, introduce yourself and let's get started.
I'm Leo. I'm principal and founder of Engage Futures Group, LLC, which is a government relations and public affairs company. My main areas of focus as a former Republican National Committee strategist and Georgia GOP executive is obviously campaigns. Advocacy is my focus for education, energy, and do a lot of work on civic engagement as well and polarization.
No, I love it. All right, y'all, for those watching, a couple of our initial clips today are going to be a little longer than normal. So bear through us through the clip, but it's just they're full of things that I want both our consultants to kind of jump in. And so just for y'all to understand, we say if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. So we're going to weed through what we're hearing, what's real, what's not. So they'll give you that take. So again, just bear with these takes that are a little longer as we see Trump going on his affordability tour. And so we're going to start with this cut first.
This week, President Trump takes his affordability pitch on the road.
And he's starting with key battleground state, Pennsylvania.
Our next guest says he directly raised the issue with President Trump during a call last week. New Jersey GOP Congressman Jeff Van Drew joins us now with more. Congressman, thank you for being here. Tell us about how that call went and what you think the president needs to do on his messaging.
Oh, the call went great. It's always good to speak with the president. You know, I guess it's going to be going on 7 years that I changed and became a Republican. And always since that time, he was great. And we've developed a friendship. I am so happy that he's going out there. He is a president of the people. He loves working people. Let me be clear. Washington, D.C. is not the culture of America. Washington, D.C. is an incubator for political dysfunction and disease. I don't know how else to say it. And you've got to work there, and you get the job done there, and you get the bills passed. But then you got to get out in the street and talk to real people, the doctors, the pipe fitters, the iron workers, the teachers, just what really makes America move and makes America happen. That's what he does so well. We all remember the amazing rallies and when he went to bodegas and fast food restaurants. I love to see him out there. He does so well with that. I'm so glad to see him in Pennsylvania, a neighboring state to me in New Jersey. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him go around the country and sell what is a real plan for the future of America.
What would you say is the most important thing that Republicans need to be focused on right now to actually improve things for people who, you know, obviously we've gotten inflation down, but the problem is you've got to catch up with salaries. What do Republicans need to focus on?
Well, remember one thing, the Biden disaster, what he did to this country, it doesn't get fixed in a day. This has been about 9 months. When all of the work that we've done kicks in next year, it's going to be amazing. You know, no taxes on tips or lower taxes on tips, lower taxes on overtime, 85% of seniors not paying any tax on Social Security. When you go and buy a new American car, you're able to write off on your taxes, the interest rate, all that is going to be huge. We're going to have a good year, all the good things we did with businesses. But here's what we must remember. Don't argue with each other. Stop being selfish. Make sure that people understand we're with them. And healthcare. I've talked about this before. We have to give people that bridge. Obamacare is horrible. The ACA has been horrible and awful. But if we're not able to immediately get rid of it for a very short period of time, continue with it while we come up with a much better comprehensive plan, people cannot afford to have huge increases in their health care. That will be a mistake. I've spoken out about that, and I'm going to continue to do so. We have to take care of the American people.
You know, Congressman, I love that you brought that up, because I think that the silver lining of that terrible shutdown that we just went through was people were finally able to see the truth about Obamacare, that it's being completely held up by all these subsidies. It's not affordable. And hopefully it is, as you say, an impetus for the Republicans to come up with a better plan that makes more sense. And I love the idea of the president going out into the country. He's a people person. He needs to tell that story. I mean, you bring such a good point about, you know, when the economy was cranking, it was under the first term of President Trump. It did take about a year and a half before we started feeling the effects of that. So there's that. But I mean, I still remember, Congressman, right before COVID hit, it was a year before, you know, a little less than a year before the election. People thought he was absolutely unbeatable because the economy was so.
Emil, we'll let you start. Any propaganda in that cut? You're on mute again, brother.
I got my shovel out because there was a lot of propaganda to weed through. So I was trying to pay attention to the big ones. Probably the one that is most egregious to me right now is the fact that he said Obamacare is bad. What we always fail to do when we do this Obamacare bad context is what was before Obamacare. It wasn't better than Obamacare. That was the problem that Obamacare was meant to fix. More people got coverage. And yes, the subsidies were supposed to be a short-term solution while the market checked and corrected itself under the new system. The problem with the system was that you had several states, all of them Republican-led, that didn't join the plan, that actively resisted it. So you cannot build a plan. So when you bring that resistance forward 10, 15 years, you end up with a situation where the subsidies, which were supposed to be a short-term solution while the market adjusted, are now a long-term solution. And the Republicans have had 8 years since Trump came in office the first time to have a plan that has never materialized. They've not even voted on a plan, much less presented one to the American people. So just that bit of propaganda was huge to me because it totally disregards how history works, how people saw healthcare before Obamacare and since, because he was saying things that didn't make any sense to anyone who's observing the politics, which is, if you've had 8 years to build a plan and you still don't have one, I don't believe you really are serious about building one and taking care of the American people's healthcare plans the way you say you want to.
And that's exactly why MTG, one of the main reasons that she fell out is because there was never a plan put forward. Leo, did you see any propaganda in here? Here's a couple of challenges I heard. Let me say this real quick, then I'll let you say. So it was interesting to me that congressman had, I guess, formerly been a Democrat, and in the last 7 or 8 years, he's now a Republican. So that was something interesting. But he said the disaster that Biden gave us. And I've always said that one is a narrative that is not the case, because I felt like Trump received a thriving economy. But I also will highlight that the analyst at the end, I think she was correct in that the economy was doing well right before the pandemic under Trump. So I think both of those. I think the Biden thing, in my opinion, is BS. And she's right about how good the economy was doing the first time Trump, right before the pandemic. So I think she's right about that. So that's a couple things that I noticed. Go ahead, Leo.
Let me just say that effective leadership is doing in the present, doing in the present time, something that protects our future. So going back and looking at what the economy was with Trump, which economists as well as even political oppositional people agreed that pre-pandemic it was good, but that's not where we are anymore. So this gentleman, a Republican, newly minted Republican, is basically a kiss up. Okay, let me just be real. He's doing more than just rhetoric. He's a new Republican, so he's trying to win favor by just saying nonsense and talking points. And so the fact is that we've got mixed feelings about our economy, and it is not just about Obamacare. That's going to get worked out. I mean, we've got time now in Congress to debate what to do about the subsidies and et cetera. That's already been talked about. Mike Johnson, Speaker, has talked about that. That discussion is happening and is going to continue to happen. MTG is on point because the issue is, are people hurting? And we'll talk about that some more, I'm sure. But yes, people are hurting. There's no doubt about that. And we cannot ignore that any more than we could ignore it when Biden inflation was happening and he tried to ignore it and we saw what happened to him. So Republicans have to now start to think about what are the positives. I mean, we do have a positive 3.8 GDP increase. The economy looks strong on some of those measures as far as an investor portfolio. I'm an investor, some people, but it's a very small percentage of us who are investors. Our portfolios look good, right? But that's not many Americans have investment portfolios that they can look at to feel better when they're looking at food prices and gas prices and the cost of living. So we are in a mixed economy. Affordability is a real issue. Any politician, Republican or Democrat, that tries to come onto the camera and say the opposite is just not telling the truth.
Now, fair enough. Let me ask both of you one more response. Now, just going to the president himself, an affordability campaign. So right now, that seems like the masterful Trump technique of knowing how to knowing how to promote. And so is it to negate what's really happening, or is he going to be able to effectively say, hey, here's what's good despite what you're feeling? Because I think that's why we're having an affordability tour from my perspective. Leo, I'll go back to you on that, and Amelia, you can give a thought as well.
Well, I mean, look, we got to look at the actual trends. We know that here in Georgia, we, had 2 PSC seats that have been solidly Republican for a very long time, flipped to Democrats. Just last night, we had several national elections, and we had a special election here in Georgia, again in Athens, Georgia, Oconee, which is where Brian Kemp is from, our governor here in our state of Georgia. We had a solid Republican seat, flip Democrat. These trends are well marked at this point. And so Trump is on the road to sort of stop the bleeding and to defend. He's on defense. And as you know, if you're on defense, you're taking shots. You're on your heels. He's not offensive anymore. So this tour that he's doing is completely to defend his agenda, his policies, as he should, because if we don't get a more positive viewpoint of the Trump economic policies before the midterms, there's going to be a bloodbath.
Emil, your thoughts?
Agreed. And here's the thing. Go back to 2024 and see the growth in the economy. You can go back to the fourth quarter of 2024. It was right around 0.5%. But if you go back before that, throughout 2024 is over 3% growth quarter by quarter. So you're not really seeing Trump's agenda impact the economy yet. It takes between a year and a half for any president's policies to really take root in the economy. And the last president's policies are what you're seeing in 2025. Not to say that he's had no effect, but Trump's big effect will come sometime in 2026 when all of his policies really take root and have the downstream effect through the economy. Then you're going to see whether or not what he's been doing the last year or so is actually going to result in the growth that he says. In the meantime, he's got to go out and, from calling it an affordability hoax from the Democrats, to going out on tour, Leo's 100% right. He's on his heels. He's playing defense. You can't call it a hoax anymore because people are feeling the pain. I was at a well-known office supply store, and I wanted to buy a red pen. Red pens cost $15 a pack in some cases, where they used to cost $5 or $7 a pack. We're talking about real people impacted with real price increases that are across the board, from eggs to pens to paper to building materials. It's going to affect the economy, and the president has to get out in front of this. It's too late. He's already behind the curve, and he's going to have to fight really hard to tell the world a story that their pocketbooks are already disavowing.
So we did have a 3.8% mid 2025 GDP increase. So the economy is actually growing, even though inflation continues to be a big problem, at least from the data that I look at. And I mean, he did do tax cuts, and that did help a certain class of people. There has been much deregulation on his part. And so we're seeing robust production in some manufacturing industries. And so that's helping that GDP growth as well. So, and we saw even over the Thanksgiving break, the Black Friday spending was up. So there are good positive signs. What's interesting to me, Emil, is that instead of just focusing on those and sort of saying, yeah, I'm doing horribly here and I'm going to do better, but here's where I'm doing well. That's not even what he's done. He's actually playing to the negative. And that's kind of interesting to me. And that just tells you how much the inflation issue is really impacting all Americans, and especially Marjorie Taylor Greene voters. And even myself, I looked up a place to go to breakfast this morning with some friends, and I decided to invite them over to my house to eat because I was treating and the prices were just like crazy. And I couldn't believe it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to treat them to breakfast at my place.
We got to keep moving, y'all. We got to keep moving. We got to keep moving. We got to keep moving. I paid $18 for a salad the other day. I will say that I was like, "Whoa, what happened? Can I get this back now?" You know what I mean? I'll go home. Yeah.
And all of those ingredients were grown in America, brother. That's the problem.
Yep, I can dig it. All right, let's move on to a big issue in Texas, if you will.
Jasmine Crockett has filed paperwork to run for Senate in Texas. I'll repeat that just in case you didn't believe me the first time. Jasmine Crockett has filed paperwork to run for Senate in Texas, and she might be the front runner among Democrats. We expect a formal announcement from her in the next hour. Now, this comes days after the Supreme Court signed off on a new congressional map that would have created 5 more right-leaning House districts across the state, and it would have really written Jasmine Crockett out of her inability to serve in the United States Congress. Now, who is she running against? Well, this morning, former congressman and previous candidate for Senate in Texas, Colin Allred, also a football player from Baylor, out. He dropped out. That leaves one of our favorites here at the Will Cain Show, running against Jasmine Crockett. It is noted moralist and liar, State Representative James Tallarico. Tallarico saying, quote, "We're building a movement in Texas fueled by record-breaking grassroots fundraising and 10,000 volunteers who are putting in the work to defeat the billionaire mega donors." Parentheses, insert from Will Cain, who I also take money from. James Tallarico taking big money from billionaire donors while saying getting billionaires out of politics. He says this movement is about unity, though, over division, unifying with billionaires. Congresswoman Crockett is welcomed into this race. So here it is, crazy Crockett versus liar Tallarico. And the big question, does either have a chance to win the United States Senate seat? Joining me now is GOP consultant Vinny Minchillo on set. Vinny, this is something. It's really something. Jasmine, let's just try it on.
Yeah.
Senator Jasmine Crockett.
We've seen crazier, but that's pretty crazy stuff. I mean, she is just, she knows how to raise hell and raise money. Those are her two best qualities.
Have we seen crazier? I challenge you, Vinny. Come up with another senator that would outrank Jasmine Crockett on the crazy scale.
I don't know.
Senator Crockett.
It'd be awfully good TV, I'll tell you that.
Okay, let's start this one step at a time. Do you think Crockett can win the Democrat nominee for Senate? Would she beat Tallarico?
She's a much better primary candidate than a general candidate, because I think what she can do is she can basically run a Mamdani campaign. I think she believes she can activate a big sleeping Gen Z group that's out there. So I would expect to see her do a lot of that stuff, to complain, to reach out to Gen Z voters and go, there's no matcha at Starbucks, and that's Donald Trump's fault. You should vote for me.
Well, okay, we can say this right now. It would look like early polling, and this was theoretical polling when nobody was in, basically, would say that Crockett is above Tallarico. He has no name ID. Nobody knows his name outside of the people who watch the Will Cain show and know him as a noted liar and hypocrite. However, nobody really knows who's prepared to go to the voting booth. But they do know Jasmine Crockett because of moments like this.
I know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now.
This ridiculous tyrant is trying to do everything that he can to break our democracy.
It's Ted Cruz. I mean, like, this dude has to be knocked over the head, like, hard.
A Timu Hitler in the White House right now that thinks that he is going to become the dictator of the United States.
Now, Vinny, I mentioned that she polls preliminarily above Tallarico.
Sure.
But she polls behind all the Republicans, including Wesley Hunt, Ken Paxton, and John Cornyn.
Yeah, and I think what you just played there is one of the most important things in this campaign, is that she's done all the hard work. There are hours and hours and hours of video of her saying crazy things. So you talked about, how do we attack a woman? How do we attack a black woman? You don't. You let her do it in her own words. And she's really done all the hard work.
Well, I think that challenge you said, how do you attack a black woman, is a challenge for James Tallarico.
Yeah.
He's got a real problem on his hands because he can't alienate the progressive base that he would need to then turn out for a general election. But it would be a neat trick.
Leo, I'll let you give. Oh, you on mute, brother. Yeah, muted yourselves. Leo, you're muted.
Dude, I don't know how that happened. I'm sorry about that. I think I'm off mute now.
Auto mute problem. Usually we go on auto mute and then off auto mute. This time it's
off
auto
delay
but
in the system.
Yeah.
Okay,
so it's really wonderful. Yep, it's really interesting on this whole situation. I've been sort of tracking. I mean, I've met and spent some time with Jasmine Crockett. I haven't met Tallarico, but I've been following him, and that guy was the star. And on Democrat side, sort of appealing to a lot of moderates as well. But then when you look at the numbers, I've been looking at some of the numbers on how they match up, the two of them, against Republicans. And I think what Colin Allred saw that made him say, yes, ma'am, I'll go take a back seat and get my money together to give to you. And he pulls out because of Crockett is because even before she announced, she was already kind of doing better against Republicans, not by much, maybe 1 or 2 points, but against Republicans, Cornyn, et cetera. Crockett is doing better. And I think that speaks to the younger generation who wants a robust fighter, et cetera. And then, certainly she is able to pretty much demand the conditions in Texas on the Democrat side. I think she's going to come out of that Democrat primary very, very strongly. And I think she will make a really good run for it in a primary, in the general.
Fair enough. Emil, your thoughts about Jasmine? Again, I just want in the end highlighting real quick that she was, because of the redistricting, is probably, in my opinion, why she's made this decision. Because I think if I recall correctly, I'll correct me if I'm wrong, the Supreme Court held up what was done. And so in this sense, she said, all right, well, I'll put my name in a bigger hat.
Yeah, real quick, the reason why the SCOTUS held up, the Supreme Court held up the ruling in Texas, because Texas followed its own law. It just changed its own laws in time to do the things that it did to redistrict. And the redistricting wasn't racially gerrymandering. It was political, which the Supreme Court has said in the past is okay. Having said that, Jasmine Crockett no longer will have a seat in the 26th election. So she decided to run for Senate. I do not like this for her. I think she should run in Congress again, in the House. Cornyn is a super strong Republican, and Texas is still very red, especially when it comes to their 2 senators. Senator Cruz was just reelected in 2024. Cornyn's up in 26. I just don't see her climbing that hill successfully without a huge turnout from Gen Z. And I know that's her base. That's where she's going to make a lot of her inroads, and she could upset the apple cart here. But for me, Texas isn't purple enough to support a statewide election for her to run as Senate in 26. She would be better served, in my opinion, staying in Congress. She has a lot of maturing she can do. I love her messaging. She appeals to her base. She knows exactly how to speak to them. The two gentlemen that you saw from Fox News, they like to clown her, but she's worked very hard to establish credibility with her base in a way that makes her dang near bulletproof. And that's pretty impressive for what they did. Just as how do you attack her? You don't let her use her own words against her. Please do that. Please take her out of context. Please show the world who she is in your eyes, and watch how you clown yourselves, because you're going to fall for everything she baits you with in order to show you who show the world who they are, who would do that against her by taking her out of context. She's going to run a very strong campaign. I agree with Leo. I just don't think she's going to be able to win in a state that hasn't gone purple enough to support a statewide election of a Democrat for Senate.
Do they really be taking her out of context? She be saying that stuff now.
I'm not saying she doesn't say it, but if I'm always going to say a 5, 15, or 30-second snippet when she's making a more comprehensive argument and she's using the kind of clown tactics and stuff that she uses. If you watch her entire argument, it's almost always beautifully logical and fully supported, but they're not going to take that. They're going to take the parts where she's doing the antics and the other stuff.
Politics is never going to.
Of course. I mean, that's why look, let's just be real. Emil, the reason why Republicans were so robust in their interest in the redistricting is because Jasmine Crockett is not just a person as a political interest, another seat. She's a major voice. I mean, this blustering that you're talking about actually rattles a lot of Republicans. It is disruptive to Republican agendas in a red state. So they don't just want to remove her just because she's a Democrat. They want to remove her because she's actually very effective. And so that they need to get rid of her to help the Trump agenda.
And so, so if I listen to what you just said, Leo, Emil's concerned because I think it's obvious she has a bright future in politics, right? That's obvious. It's just what makes she be setting herself up for the future. And Emil sounds like you're a little concerned, like, stay here a little longer before you make a bigger move because you're saying you don't think it's the right time. But again,
well, stay where though? I mean, but where does she have an option to stay? She doesn't. Her best chance is where she is. I think. I mean, running for Senate is her best chance, and I think the trends are on her side.
I agree with Leo. I just don't know if Texas is ready to support a statewide election of a Democrat for Senate. I'm not saying she's not poised for it. I think she should run as a Democrat in the new district that they just created around her that put her out and puts her in. But honestly, there's a really strong argument for her to run. And Allred is smart enough to realize that he would just get mowed over by Tallarico and Crockett. So he's just bowing out wisely, I think, in my opinion. When it was him versus Tallarico, he had a chance. But I don't think he's going to try to face down that juggernaut from Crockett.
Yeah, we got a couple of comments. One from B House says redistricting is going to push her out of Congress. Correct. So yes, you're right about that. Here's a good question. I think, and I'm looking. This is, a matter of fact, this is if you remember, the brother we had on the state was on the show with us the other week from the Black Jab podcast, because he's watching today, and he says, I would love for someone to tell me what Crockett's actual legislative accomplishments are. You guys have done it on the show before, so I'll let either one of you jump in and answer his question, and then we'll get to the next cut.
I mean, she's probably directly responsible in Congress for about $400 million of federal money coming into the state. She's sponsored and introduced bills called the Strip Act to decriminalize fentanyl. She's done some other stuff with the Judiciary, Agriculture, and Oversight Committees to really help shape some strategy that has directly affected Texas. And despite the fact that she's a Democrat, she's been working with the energy sector to figure out how to improve clean energy funding in Texas, which has actually taken root, as well as trying to get emissions down. So she's done a lot for the short time she's been in Congress. Could she have done more? And could she have been more progressive? I think so. But Her record is actually pretty good. And House.gov, if you want to look at it, you can look up every legislator's accomplishments in House.gov and find out for yourself exactly what bills she sponsored and where those bills went and all the other things that she's done that are recorded in the congressional record. So she's got a little body of work behind her.
And I remember this too, and this I'm obviously you're more specific than not myself, but when you and Shelley both, when Shelley was on the show, y'all highlighted when you say what is a congressman's job for their district, y'all highlighted that she was one of the best ones specifically for her district, and just from a general standpoint, because you said the ultimate job is to bring the money in and then, in a sense, be protective over that it's not misused. If I understood it, that's generally the idea of what your congressperson should be done. And we had played a clip where somebody was clowning her, and I didn't know this, and both of you and Shelley both pointed out for what a congressman specifically is supposed to do, she was head over heels over a lot of Congress people for their area. And both of you said that. I didn't know that, but y'all said it on the show before. So I just thought I would bring that back to the table as well. All right, let's play this next cut. This is just an interesting cut that I came across. Hold on, let me see if I might have another response here. All right, cool. Black Jack podcast is respectfully. Sounds like a light resume. As always, I have to lift up Adam Clayton Powell. He didn't have a friendly environment at all, but moved major legislation. Definitely big up to Adam Clayton Powell. Not sure that we have too many Congress people in the Congress right now that can stand up to Adam Clayton Powell. So that's a big jump, I would say, to kind of immediately put her up against this as from my perspective, a short period of time in Congress. I may be wrong with that, but we definitely got people that have been in Congress since I was born. So she's definitely not in that vein. And I'm not just being protective of her. I'm just saying I definitely respect what you're saying, brother. I just think if you're going to make Adam Clayton Powell the standard, then I think many of our congressmen would fail on any level, left or right.
Are you kidding? He was in Congress for 26 years. He was in Congress for 26 years during the most tumultuous time in civil rights history. So, yeah, he was one of the progenitors and leaders of that movement, and he was fighting a good fight, and he did have a ton of help. Yes, he was not in a friendly environment, but he had a bunch of help, and he was running as vanguard, but behind him was a lot of support. So I give mad respect to Adam Clayton Powell Jr. for all the things he did for his district and for all of us Black people in America. But he also was there for a very long time before we can look at his body of work.
Right. And what city did he represent?
Was that not New York City?
Exactly. Quite different than Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, so that makes a big difference too. Nah, good. But I love that's what we're here for, right? This is a good dialogue, great dialogue. All right, this is something I just came across as interesting. I don't think I want to spend a lot of time on it. Matter of fact, Black Job Podcast clarified it, specifically Harlem, to be specific. So great comments on Black Job Podcast. All right, cool. This is just something I came across on the Breakfast Club. We'll play some of their clips from time to time. Joy Reid, who is now independent, was on there, and I want to just play a part of this clip, so this won't be quite as long as the other ones. But I just there's a couple of things that was interesting that I thought it was an opportunity to learn from my perspective.
You used the word authoritarianism. At what point do people stop calling certain political trends polarization and start calling them authoritarianism?
Fascism?
You
Like,
know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, and this is one of the reasons I am glad that I'm not in mainstream media. It's very difficult because the governing authorities over you say, and the standards and practices says, well, don't call that fascism. Don't call that authoritarianism. Just call it a difference of political opinion. It's a difference of opinion. It's not a difference of opinion. It's fascism. And I think more of us need to say it and just get used to saying it, because you can't fight something you can't name. And if we're not naming it authoritarianism, in fact, which is what it is, and they're not like subtle about it. They're being very clear. They want it. This is a white supremacist government that's saying if you are not a white Christian male, you are just not welcome in any institution. You're not welcome in academia. You're not welcome in the military. The whole thing. We're bombing boats in the Caribbean. Like, what is this? And it's being normalized as if this is a difference in politics. It's not.
I'm gonna tell you why I get confused by it. I do think that a lot of things that I see are authoritarian strategy, but when I see somebody like President Biden say it's a threat to democracy, but then he's outside the White House saying welcome home, or when I see Zohran Mamdani call Donald Trump a fascist, but then say I can work with a fascist, I'm like, Well, that's not how I was taught how I never, fascism, you can't work with a fascist.
Yeah.
Like, that's never worked in the history of mankind. So sometimes we say these words, but when we don't act upon these words, it kind of takes the meaning out of these words, I think.
And I think politics makes it difficult to fight fascism because you do actually have to deal still with the president of the United. Like, he's still the president, unfortunately, you know. But I think there's certain things that I think are, I feel like Biden, what he did was worse, to be honest, because Biden spent an entire campaign telling us that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, that Donald Trump was and then the welcome home thing was insane. You know, even Obama, you know, keying with him at the funeral, like, this is a normal guy who wants to arrest you, by the way. You know, I think that because the politicians, particularly at the older I don't think they understand. I don't think they really think it's fascism and authoritarianism. I think they think it is difference in politics. That's what I worry about.
But that's how I feel about Mondani too. Because I feel like if you use those words while you're campaigning, like when you get in the you become the elected official and become mayor, I understand you have to work with them.
Yeah.
So maybe you shouldn't use that kind of language if you're going to tell us you can work with a fascist, because that's not how fascism works.
What I'll give him credit for, though, when he was point blank asked, even in his presence, is he a fascist? He was like, yeah.
He
was like, yeah. He was asked on Meet the Press.
After he got a little pat and was like, oh, it's okay to call me that.
Right. He wouldn't even let him finish his sentence because Trump was like, he fell in love with Mamdani in that moment. I'm not sure what happened. I really want to know what he said to him in the room because Trump seemed to have fallen in love with him. But when he was on Meet the Press, it was either Meet the Press or CBS Morning. I was on Meet the Press and he was asked point blank, is he a fascist? He was like, yeah.
But that's when he said he could work with him. And that's why I got confused. I was like, I've never seen somebody work with a fascist in the history of mankind, and it bodes well for them. Except that's actually how you normalize fascism.
Right. Well, I mean, the reality is the one time that you could say, well, I don't know if you would call him a fascist. He was definitely an authoritarian, was Stalin.
Yeah.
And I mean, FDR worked with Stalin. I mean, you had Khrushchev worked with Kennedy. I mean, unfortunately, when you have a regime, you've got to deal with the regime. And I think if you're the mayor of New York.
Leo, it's up to you and me right now. So,
Look,
while we wait for Monte to come back.
The last part, she says, when you got a regime, you got to deal with the regime. The reason why both Charlemagne the God and the sister is confused. And I love hearing her make her explanation because it explains to me why she's now calling herself an independent, because I thought that she's completely a Democrat Party prop. And that's why her show was terrible, because it was so obvious that she's always stumping for the Democrats. But now she's an independent. You know why she's an independent? Because she's disillusioned. And it happens to emotionally novice people who are running a grift, either left or right, which I think Joy Reid runs a grift, emotionally triggering Black people and progressive liberals in a way that gets a heightened response. She is not a journalist. And I'm not trying to disrespect her. I'm just calling her what she is because she's saying it herself. She's saying, I don't understand how this could be. And that's because she doesn't look at things in an objective way until she gets to some kind of final moment. And her final moment led her to be an independent, led her to say, oh, well, I guess this is the way of things. You have to work with the regime. What requires you to work with the people elected? Our democracy, our checks and balances. That's why we're not in a fascist society. We have elements being, by the Trump administration, there are elements of fascism, ultra-nationalism, right? Having a dictatorial approach with his leadership, his other people. But our system still allows him to be removed. And they don't have to follow him, right? So we don't have complete fascism here. There are elements of it, just like there are elements of socialism. So people using these extreme words, they're just manipulating us emotionally. Yes, we should be concerned. We should keep a watchful eye. But Joy Reid kind of hyped herself out of a job.
And again, that's what we're here for, because that's what concerns me is fascism is a word that's just been used over and over. You know what I mean? Like racism was moved over and over and over. And to Charlemagne's point, he's like, hey, I'm getting confused on how it's being used just from his perspective. perspective. Again, to your point, Leo, big props to Charlemagne, but as you said, not a journalist either, right? So just from a fair perspective, he says, hey, this is confusing, because he said, if y'all tell me this, why are we seeing this? And to your point, Leo, it's because we've gotten away from the fact that we really do have a democratic republic that at any given time in history has been at risk of looking like more one or the other. But that is going to be for those listening, that's going to be the flow of our democratic thing. And you should fight for what makes the most sense. But our system does allow for it. And so you're right, Leo, in my perspective, it's incorrect to apply the term as if our system is that or allows for that. I'm not trying to protect anything. It's just talking about the reality of what our system allows. Emil, one last thought on that, and then we're going to keep this conversation moving.
For sure. Leo's 100% right. And this is the problem with our American politics writ large and our journalism writ large, as everybody tries to get eyeballs and attention. They're going to use more and more extreme language, and this language becomes diluted. Fascism is bad. Charlemagne is 100% right. He should be confused, because if you're using that word, why would you work with somebody who's being called that? But the problem is that we're using those words and have for the past 150 years. You can go back to Tammany Hall. You can go back to Tippecanoe. You can go back. We've always thrown out these words. We've always used them. The difference today is now we're not willing to compromise and come to the table, because those words begin to mean something in ways that they didn't used to, because it was, hey, I'm going to call you this, but I know I'm going to have to compromise with you later. Now it's like, wait, you're compromising with a fascist? Oh, we're going to fight. That problem is exacerbated the way we're doing journalism today.
And I think the bigger point, if y'all tell me if I'm right about this, and the bigger point, which is something that we're all, when we say politically conscious, this is an example of what I mean by consciousness. So we have to understand that, yes, that journalism is being done in the way that Emil just mentioned. We ultimately must take one step further and says, okay, we must also be aware of it and not fall for it to the extent that we're not willing to work with each other. And that's the miss. Our system is designed for us to respectfully disagree and then hopefully come to a middle that works for the most of us. Like, we are losing sight of that because we're buying into the propaganda, hence why we have this show.
Compromise is not a four-letter word.
Say it again.
Compromise is not a four-letter word.
I love it. Good stuff. All right, so let's get a little specific. I think this is an example. I just happened to come across this. I think it's a good opportunity for us to get into what happened locally here at Leo. I'm just going to kind of use this clip to kind of set up, again, the individual responsibility we as voters have. I thought this was an interesting clip that can kind of set us down that path, because I definitely want to talk about what happened recently here in Atlanta. But let's talk about this clip first, and then we'll roll into that as well.
Listen, y'all, we need to have a real raw conversation, and I'm just the one to do it because I'm not afraid of y'all, okay? Every day you all are complaining that nothing has changed, things have gotten worse, so you opt out of the system, you don't vote. In actuality, things get worse and things don't change because you don't vote. And you say, well, Rashawn, I don't trust politicians. Politicians are just people, honey. Same 10 fingers, same 10 toes, different skin tones. You put them in place to represent you. If you don't like what they're doing, you remove them. There's no reason that Mitch McConnell should have been in office since 1985. I was 4 years old. I am not a politician. If I decide to run and win, I am now a politician, which means up until I become one, you trusted me and now you don't. But you don't know my story. You don't know that I am a veteran, a queer black woman with a trans son and a mom that's dying of dementia. Everything affects me. They are now changing laws where they're only requiring one nurse to be in a facility. That will affect me if I decide to put my mom in a home. The prices are ridiculous. Who got 10 grand a month? I have a trans son, so I'm fighting for trans rights. I am a queer woman, so I'm fighting for LGBTQIA rights. I am a black woman, so I am fighting for black rights. I am a woman, so I am fighting for women's rights. I am a veteran that used to be homeless. I understand everything from housing to pay. It affects me all. But if I decide to run, you all don't trust me. You're running a purity test against candidates. When there's no perfect candidate, nobody's above criticism, but nobody is perfect. Meanwhile, the opposition don't care about any of that. You understand me? So things will get worse and nothing will change because you all either opt out or you decide you're too good for this system. Everybody's affected by this system. I want you all to understand that. Get over yourself. Get in the field or get out the way.
All right, Leo, well, it's your turn, so we'll start with you. I thought it was a very interesting cut that really, in my opinion, beautifully just highlights how there's so many ways that local politics affect you. I thought she contradicts herself with her last comment when she says, get in the field or get out the way, just from the standpoint of getting out the way for many will be that 1/3 of the country who still never votes. You know, we highlight that President Trump got the most votes at 77 million or whatever, but most people don't realize he eked out percentage-wise. Kamala got 75 million, but there's still a whole nother third of the country that stays uninvolved, even though the stuff affects them. That's the bigger point that I think she's making. But I just wanted to, hear your thoughts on what she had, your and Emil's thoughts on what she had to say.
No, I thought she beautifully explained herself, and she, pointed out the importance of the politics of self-interest, which all of us should operate by. I don't agree with her lifestyle and all. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about her that I'm like, that's interesting. I mean, that's not, however, everybody should be able to exercise their voting rights in a way that serves their interests. From the beginning of our Constitution, that's been the model. Now, but people choose not to. It's mind-blowing to her and me. That's what she and I totally would probably agree on everything. How dare you not exercise your own self-interest, represent yourself with your vote? And we know, and I know you're going to get to it a little bit, that one vote can make a huge difference in what outcome. Last night I had an event, and a young lady who wanted me to give her some political mentoring came to the event. She's a young entrepreneur. She's only 29 years old. She doesn't vote. She says she hates politics. And I said, how can I help you? She said, well, I lost a business because of a coding issue, a local zoning and code issue. And I said, you said you don't like politics. And she goes, I don't even vote. And I said, you could have influenced your ability to keep your business if you understood who makes codes and who they listen to about codes. If you'd exercise your political power, even with a $20 donation to the mayor of that city, your chances of losing your business would have decreased 1,000%.
Wow. Emil,
if you don't get into politics, politics will get into you.
That's your favorite comment. I love that comment. Emil, any thoughts again to the sister pointing out how many ways politics affect you, whether you vote or not? I want to make this a case of whether you should be voting or not. It's really, we're trying to raise your conscious level for you to really understand, at least pay attention to what matters to you. She clearly laid out all of hers, but go ahead, Emil.
So if you want to be controlled by 15% of the population, don't vote, because that's what's happening. In cities and states around the country, some of the most important elections are being decided by less than 15% of all registered voters. If you want your life controlled by 15% of this population, and y'all know how the public education system is, so those 15% could be anything from the craziest people to the most educated people, but you're leaving your fate in their hands by not voting. She's 100% right, and I love that she broke it down. The highest participating states, Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, Connecticut, they hover around 80%, 75 to 80%. The lowest voting states, the Texas and Louisiana, they hover around 60%. So you are getting a state where at best you're seeing between 60 and 80% of the population decide the fate of the politics in that state. What about that 20 to 40%? That's the problem we have in America. That 20 to 40%, what Leo calls that third, you know it very well, Montoya. That third is willing to throw up his hands and say all politicians are the same. They are the same because you let them be the same. That's what she's saying. They are regular people. They put on their pants one leg at a time. They 10 toes and 10 fingers. But you know what else they do? They respond to your requirements. Why do they respond? Because they know their livelihood is in your hands. So they'll either suppress the vote or encourage the vote, depending on how they see you. And the ones that suppress the vote, they're winning because a third of us have decided, I don't want to play. That sister was 100% spot on. And to Leo's point, or to your point, Montoya, at the end when she said get off the field, get in the field or get out the way, I hope people don't hear that message, because we all need to participate. These people need to be thrown out when they don't listen to us. And when you get out of the way, what you're saying to them is it's okay for you to be substandard because I'm going to let you. That's what not voting says. You're okay not representing me.
All right, we got a quick comment. Marquise Harden says, I love when someone says they don't agree with someone's lifestyle. I find that hilarious on so many levels. Wanted to highlight this, Leo. Speaking of how one vote can matter, you just helped a sister win a race here in Atlanta, very specific to the entire Atlanta school district. So if you could just highlight, and Emil was one of the first ones to bring this to the show, of how certain groups within politics said they're going to take advantage of these smaller elections and make sure they turn out to push the agenda because they know that people won't turn out. So they took advantage of it. So you just had an election where very few votes decided the seat. If you could talk about that a little right now, Leo, that would be perfect.
Yeah, and let me be clear. My comment on lifestyle could have been extrapolated on because I'm talking about the political interests of that lifestyle. Those are not mainstream norms of society, and that's debatable. But I can say that with pretty good confidence. So on the issue of the representation of politics and our impact, the impact of the vote came very glaringly clear here in the APS, Atlanta Public School race that we just had on December 2nd runoffs. I mean, you're dealing with a situation like this. We had a young lady, Johns Hopkins educated, a Black woman from Atlanta, went to public schools in Atlanta. I think she was in Stone Mountain. And then, and she runs and she ends up in a runoff against a white kid who doesn't work, admittedly has no job, but was supported by the Working Families Party just because he was an extreme socialist, okay? So he runs on that. His parents are funding his whole civic engagement, political interest career. He's run for school board before. He's hardly ever voted, but he's run down twice. This kid even says on 11 Alive News, I have no experience. But guess what? With the lady who's been working with the education system, serving Black kids successfully, getting Black kids into college, got a proving track record and wants to do more. And the school board manages a $1.8 billion budget, $1.8 billion. That's bigger than the city's budget of Atlanta, okay? And you're going to hand this to a kid? You know how many? She won by just under 1,000 votes. Wow. That's it. She almost lost to this kid, because folks are not engaged enough to say we demand a certain standard of excellence for children. And that's an example, because think about this. On the average track meet that I would attend with my daughter, sometimes there were more than 1,000 families. All I would have to do to win an election is walk through the crowd and hand out my little flyer, and I can win with just one event. You can go down to Magic City sometimes and pull enough. That's a strip club for those who don't know. You could probably pull enough votes sometimes to swing an election in a big way. Is that the kind of democracy we want?
And it's one we can take advantage of when we talk about doing things specifically for our community. We can take advantage of it at these times. And I want to be very candid here and very sincere of, again, I learned from both of you guys. You guys are obviously highly politically informed. I'm still learning from you guys, so I don't really claim to be way more informed than maybe the people that were encouraging to be informed, if you will, who tend to watch this show. But I want to highlight that, Leo, you invited me out to an event where both the young man and the young lady spoke. It was before it became, to a runoff or whatever. Right. And so I want to highlight, like, I think I told you at that particular event, I saw the relatability in that young man, right? Like, it wasn't until I saw Shelly on his show highlighting that the runoff was coming about. On his show, he gave her track record in a way that made it seem like, why was she even in a runoff with this guy? But at that event, I'm saying as a voter myself, I wasn't, I couldn't vote in this particular one. But I said if I was able to vote, if I just as a voter showed up, she didn't have the best showing that day. Now it was a longer camera. She didn't have the best showing that day, which was pointed out, and for my opinion, the track record and the qualification. It just didn't come across. That's all I'm saying. So I'm saying this. I'm explaining this specific example to those watching, saying it don't take much sometimes to influence how you might vote in that booth. So I can see how with his appeal, because his tagline was a very simple one. And like you said, having plenty of money, being backed by his parents. But his tagline was, nobody that's on the board has been in the Atlanta school system in the last 20 years. Like that was his tagline. And it worked so much so that he was able to get to a runoff. I didn't know he didn't have a job till Leo just said it, right? So I'm just saying.
And even though you also didn't know that tagline was a lie, he was lying. Because he himself went to private school in Atlanta until he was in 11th grade. He was lying. And that's your point. You can sit there, you can hear a political pitch. It's 100% lying, and it might persuade you to do something that's absolutely against your best interest.
That's my bigger point. Thank you for seeing that. So again, hoping that I could give that personal point to basically say, hey, this is why we're telling you your one vote actually matters. This is
and
why
I also
we're telling you.
I know I'm as a conservative, I'm digging a little bit, so y'all forgive me, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Okay.
You also have to really question anything. And I mean, I don't like white nationalism, and I also don't like things when like the Working Family Party plays these identity politics and they throw up on their website that we're for Black women. And then you get a super uber, not just qualified. So I ain't into the elitism of her John Hopkins education and her work in Harlem. But yeah, the work in Harlem is a different thing where she turned around the school and helped little Black kids and girls like rise up and decrease the gap and raise high standards. She had a proven track record of that. She raised money for school choice, and they use that as a negative, like choice is a bad thing. Tell your little girl, I don't want you having choices of qualified men today. I mean, what kind of system says to a people you shouldn't have choice? She does these things, okay? Her record showed that not only is she a Black woman, Working Family Party, but she's successful at helping poor kids, which is another one of your things that you claim that you were for. So the hypocrisy is ridiculous, and that I want to call that out.
No, fair enough. That's what we're here for, man, is to speak the truth. All right, so now I'm about to call you out. We talked about this, Leo, if you remember. If you got 10 more minutes for me. You got 10 more minutes? All right, cool. We call this, for anybody watching, we call this our extra innings. We talk specifically politics. In the extra inning, we try to get deep into our community, which we've kind of already done it with this last conversation. It came down to a particular, but and the last point on that is it was less than 1,000 votes. Don't tell me your one vote doesn't matter. So let me kind of close out that with this. And so we played this clip on the last time you were on the show, and you had a response. I'm going to play the actual clip so people have that context. Then I'm going to let's play your response, Leo. So we're actually replaying a clip. I don't think we've done it on the show before, but it's just to create these extra innings where we kind of go a little deeper. And so this is a clip that we play, and I'm gonna let everybody hear Leo's response to it, and then we'll get into the dialogue. They're both like a minute and a half long, so bear with us, about 3 minutes, not too long, y'all. All right, here's the first one that we played.
Let's cut through the noise and tell the truth. Joe Biden was the most pro-Black president since LBJ, and he did all of it in just one term. Here's the record. He had record low Black unemployment. He achieved record low Black child poverty, record high HBCU funding, record high Black student loan forgiveness, record high SBA loans to Black businesses. And he had 7 Black cabinet members, the most in U.S. history. That cabinet included the first Black and female vice president, first Black secretary of defense, first Black EPA administrator, first Black head of OMB, a very important office, first Black chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. He also appointed the most black federal judges, 63 in all, including the first black woman on the United States Supreme Court. Again, Biden did all of this in one term. But now Trump is back and he's trying to erase all of it. If you don't know the facts, you'll fall for the lies and disinformation of the pro-black imposters. Remember, all your skin folks aren't your kin folks. Stay woke.
I hope we can have you back, because the analysis that says that I want to love black people and black resilience enough to be critical of it, to say that we need more than just representation. I mean, look, the number of times, Emil, that gentleman said first black this, first black. Well, what does that mean? First black to get on first base, first black to throw a football. I mean, it's like, if we had $1 for every time a first black incident happened, we wouldn't need reparations. I mean, it's like, okay. I mean, I'm the first black person to pick up his coffee mug on the Montoya show. It's like, how is this standard that we have? It's so low. And so when people ask me, why aren't you a conservative Democrat, Leo? Because you're pro-black, you're pro-social justice, da 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 da. I said, because you know what? They're not committed enough to the crap. I don't want first black. What I want is real commitment to a democratic republic that represents and commits to restorative truths, things that are real and systemic, that allows us to have freedom and independence without having to position ourselves to a white way or even a political way, but a dignity way, a self-reliance way.
So I'll give you props. I actually put that clip up on the page and it got a whole bunch of watches. People loved it, just to give you that. So I did put that up on the page and people loved it. And I thought about it after the fact. We talked about it very briefly and I said, let's save it for the show. So we haven't talked in depth for anybody out there watching. And I said, when I thought about it, I wanted to say this to you. I felt like you leaned into the first black, which was obviously because he laid it out. So I'm not knocking you for that. He kept saying first black, first black. I felt like he ended it with that. You highlighted, and here's one of my point of issues with you. I have a couple, but here's one, and I'll let you respond, and then I'll tell you the other ones. So one point of issue was saying, hey, the money that was thrown at the HBCUs, you, in my opinion, you were a little dismissive of it, and I think that's unfair from this standpoint. Like, you and I both agree that money doesn't fix education at the primary level. Like, we both, we've had that conversation. Like, just throwing a bunch of money at school districts in itself. Oh, I raised this much money for the school district on a primary level. That in itself is not going to fix education. So we agree on that. I think it's a big difference on the amount that goes to the HBCUs. I happened to hear right after that show from a sister who, I think it might be maybe Morehouse or maybe Spelman that she works for. They're all having to take a pay cut in order so that none of them lose their jobs. So I'm saying that money to the HBCUs, I'm not just giving Biden that, we try to increase it every year, but that's a very effective tool because we still know our HBCUs provide half and half our engineers in the entire country, even though a lot of us go to PWIs. So I'm just saying my point of contention is some of the things that he highlighted in the beginning, the lower employment rates or the more people on healthcare. Those things do effectively help our community. So I think those are things that can be highlighted. Go ahead, brother.
No, I thank you for sharing that. And I stand by everything I said that day. And yes, in the essence of time, I picked out, some of the representational politics that I thought were being played with the gentleman's comment. And I did not, extrapolate on the other metrics that he brought out, including, some of the metrics he said about low black unemployment. But however, there were, pre-COVID, Trump also had low black unemployment. If we want to talk about Biden's record and say, here are things that he did, I can specifically say that within the Inflation Reduction Act, Biden gave so much money to the ground game of climate activism that there were black people who benefited from that. So I made a statement there, but is that legislation that systemically changes the resilience and quality of Black people's lives? Because Stacey Abrams was able to go and abscond $300 million because of Biden, does that help all Black people? I don't think so. So my point is that yes, Biden did some things, and we can talk about those things. And again, that's the importance of elections. So if you want that kind of action, and those are more executive order type actions to take place, then vote and then create an agenda that says these things are things that we saw Biden do. Now you got a track record. You can say, okay, he did this, he did that, he helped the HBCUs. And if you think that those things are going to increase Black wealth and resilience, hey, go for it. You should, and I will also push for anything that's going to help Black resilience. Now, I work on energy policy because I think it's transcendent of Blackness. I think it's a strong economic resilience for the future of America to have a reliable, sustainable sources of energy helps all people. I want to say this last thing and I'll stop. Black people, we better wake up to the fact that though we know that we are moving into what I would call a post-racial society, not in practice, meaning racism still exists and is going to continue to hurt us. What's going to change, though, is the amount of interest or empathy that people have about racism, because there's a backlash going on. The perfect example is what I just said. The Working Family Party, which claims to be for Black people here in Atlanta, ran a bunch of white people on a pro-Black agenda, because what they're saying is that we no longer are going to yield to the idea that Black people should be representing Black interests. Hey, I'm not going to call that right or wrong. I'm just going to tell you the game is changing. And you need to be aware of that and really develop an agenda focus rather than a representation focus.
So I'll say that I'm not lost on the representation focus. That's why the Black First didn't resonate for me. And it does not. I've been on for those who know, I'm the curator of the Mental Dialogue Community Club, and I've been highlighting for years. We're way past to being proud of First Black. So representation is not even where I'm coming from. However, what I am saying is at the end of the day, systemically, for example, here in Atlanta, knowing, having worked with people who are in the finance industry who specifically help, for example, elderly with, their medicines and they try to help them with that kind of stuff. I know there was a significant difference in how much people were paying on, because me and Emil used to talk about it, that there was a track record. Again, he and Emil wasn't caught up in the first at all, but there was a track record of African Americans overall performing pretty well under the last administration. This is not me fighting for Biden. I'm talking about because what we highlighted was that those policies in reality do help. If more of us are getting access to become doctors of engineering because more money is to the HBCUs. So I do look at that as an overall systemic benefit to our community, for example.
Thank you, Montoya. And I don't disagree. And that's why I said, look at what you think Biden did well, and then decide that you're going to get behind a candidate who will do the same things if you think that those things were effective. Because it's been done once. That means that door has been walked through. So again, the big one is the climate issues. Obviously, there's a lot to be talked about related to subsidies for medical care and those kinds of baseline safety net issues that we might want to talk about without destroying dignity, So that discussion needs to be held. The Congressional Black Caucus needs to be talking about that. Local cities, Atlanta itself needs to be talking about how can it do things that were like that. Now, I want to make sure we're clear that there's a difference between policy by executive order and policy by legislation.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we need to make sure that we are implementing some policy. If we had implemented policy by legislation in a stronger way, wouldn't have been able to roll back a lot of the things.
That's a fair comeback. Emil, we went back and forth because I told him I wanted to call him out about it. Sure. I don't want to take too much more of y'all time. So it'd be nice for you to kind of give a synopsis of what you just heard as you sat back and watched us go back and forth based on his comments from before.
on an individual personal level, I'm always proud of the first Black. I always want to see those people shine because they typically are overqualified for the positions for which they are appointed or selected. But the problem is that I need to see from that initial push the policies and the focus that affects the rest of us. So I want to see how they use that first Black position to do things for our community. If I don't see it, then I can celebrate it individually. And then I'm gonna be like, okay, next, because I need to see what Leo's talking about, those policy implications, those downstream policy effects. The other thing that I'll say is that if we're going to have a discussion about whether or not Black people are going to prosper in this nation, we have to contextualize it. Black Jack, when he was on the podcast, and that's the one that you were showing, Montoya, he was very clear. Are we fighting a fight where at the end of the day, all we are is is our cage more gilded or less gilded? Are we really free? Are we really able to accumulate and pass on wealth that affects our families and our families' futures in a positive way in a nation that has always been hostile toward us? If we don't have people who understand that fundamental reason for our position in the political system, we miss out. I don't want us to be wealthier. I don't want us to be different than we are without the freedom, the dignity, and the responsibility that we've talked about before.
No, fair enough. Here's my last thing I'll say, and we don't have time to explore it. But ultimately, I think what you just said, there is an aspect of we misunderstand what, in my opinion, what politics could and should provide us. And what I mean by that is the idea that there are systemic things that give us an opportunity to gain, either whether it's massive wealth or, in a sense, reposition ourselves. I say we still have, to a degree, misunderstood what our ancestors did to Adam Clayton Powell Juniors of the world. They set us up for the opportunity. We can't, in my opinion, ask for politics to give much more than that. But, but I can if I want. It's obviously my choice. But if I'm saying, hey, more people are getting jobs, more people are getting education, that is, whether, I don't care if that's D or R behind the name, but whichever one's giving me that, I could care less about the identity politics that's often used as propaganda to say vote this way or that way. I'm still just looking at the real numbers. And so even if I don't agree with the identity politics that's being pushed forward, I still got to side with who's given the most opportunity based on where our people are really at. So when we even talk about rollbacks, we're talking about rollbacks because what we all say on here, are you conscious of what's happening in your own political interest? If you're listening to the propaganda, you're on a team. I don't think African Americans can afford to be on either team based on the policies that are most effective for us. So, guys, I got on my personal soapbox to end this thing, but thank y'all for another great show. We'll pop up on y'all next week. If y'all think y'all saw something very important today, please share this with your people. And if you're in Atlanta, I'm gonna close with a unashamed announcement for the Mental Dialogue Community Club. If you're in Atlanta, I'm going to close out with this commercial. We'll see y'all next week. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. And again, if you're in Atlanta, join us for an amazing event. Brother Leo will be there as a judge for the Soapbox Dialogue. The Mental Dialogue Live Experience presents Soapbox Dialogues Friday, December the 19th, 7 p.m. at Urban Grind as ATL's boldest minds take to the soapbox for 5 fiery minutes, their mic, their moment, then face real-time questions and clapbacks from the crowd, featuring Akua Elabuaban, Mario Reyes, Casey Venens, and Dr. Bilal King. Donation entry, free parking, and after party at Rocksteady. If you bring smart and good people together, smart and good things happen. All details at mentaldialogue.com.